Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome to the Half Hour Podcast. I'm Brian, the creator of Half Hour. My goal here is simple, to add real value to your day, to help you learn, to help you lead, and to help you level up in your leadership journey. Whether it's a new perspective, a real-world example, or something you can put into practice right away, I hope that what you hear today gives you something you can take back to work and your team. Let's get started. To check out my past episodes, go to itshalfhour.blog/podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with your network. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining the Half Hour Podcast. This week I am exploring something that I wrote years ago, a personal code of ethics, and I'm going to be talking about what still holds true and the things that I've learned over that. So if you've ever wondered how to lead in your values or what your values are and how to put those into practice, this one's for you, so stick around. So we all say that we have values, but when the pressure hits, what do we actually reach for? Today, I'm taking you behind the scenes of something I wrote back in 2019 before the world shut down and before, everything just kind of really changed for me. I went through a lot of experiences that have really challenged my values and has allowed me to put those into practice in my leadership. My personal code of ethics, it started as an educational exercise, actually, but it turned into something that I use every day. And I think that putting it down on paper and having something to reference and go back to, and also letting that evolve over time and based on the things that I learn and things that work really well and things that don't work well and that maybe I've changed or I've learned and I've evolved. I think that having that document be a living document that you can constantly revisit is something that's been really helpful for me, not only to help and to guide me in leadership, but also it keeps me honest and it keeps me on track whenever I get off track or if something really rattles me. It helps me to go back to that and to recenter and ground my leadership. So, whenever I was in grad school at UCSD, this was part of an ethics class. And we went through a lot of theory about ethics and what it was and who started it and who argued what and all of that stuff, which I think is super important. And I think that framing leadership and stage management from an ethical perspective is not only something that we don't talk very much about, but I think that it's really important and that as stage managers and production leaders as a whole, ethical challenges and ethical dilemmas are things that we deal with every day. And if you're in production and leadership and you're watching/listening to this, you know what I'm talking about. Things come up all the time and we have to make split-second decisions. And sometimes that's an ethical decision and sometimes it's not. So I think that this has really come to help me a lot. And it started as an educational exercise, like I mentioned, where we had a list of something like 20 or 30 different values, and I had to categorize them as a personal value or a work value. And for me at the time, I saw myself as kind of these two different people, and I don't know if you identify with that, but as a stage manager, it was like, this is Brian as a stage manager, and these are all the things that I care about, and this is Brian as a person, and these are all the things that I care about. And for me, this exercise really helped me to merge those two things together and to allow myself, honestly, to just be who I am, be the person that I am, and not have to pretend to be one kind of version that you're supposed to be as a stage manager, and then being who I actually am as a person and sort of having that sort of set of values. So that was something that really kind of shaped this and started this. And once I went through that exercise, I started reflecting on that and I was like, you know what? I think this is like really eye-opening and I think it could be a really great tool for me, like I mentioned in the intro, that it can be a guiding post and something that's on paper that you can constantly go back to and that you can revisit over time. So that's been super helpful for me and that's really what I took away from it. There's 4 different things that I chose to write about and to sort of consolidate for myself. You can make as many as you want, as many or as little as you want, whatever makes the most sense for what you do and what you think is useful. But for me, the first one was personal growth and learning. And this is what I wrote. I embrace the curiosity of the mind and openness to change. That sounds really good on paper and sounds really fancy. But it's also something that really it's a cornerstone to my leadership style and how I approach leadership. I think curiosity is so powerful, and I think the premise of asking why and being curious about something is so disarming, especially if you're in a conversation or a debate or you disagree about something. I think starting with first understanding and having the curiosity to ask, why do you think that way? Why do you feel that way about this particular point of view that you're bringing to this conversation? I think that is valuable. And I think that as a leader, that can change the course of a decision or a team dynamic. And it can be a really powerful tool to be curious. So I think not only being curious and having that learning part of the personal growth and learning, but I think also some self-awareness, because sometimes we learn things about a person or about a perspective or a viewpoint or a culture, and it doesn't only disarm the conversation and allows us to move in a different direction perhaps, but it also teaches me something. It also allows me to become more self-aware about that person or that culture or the situation. And I take that with me to the next job, to the next production, to the next relationship, whatever that is for you. And so I think that can really help you pivot from one thing into a completely different direction. I think that's really powerful. The next thing is rewarding and supportive relationships. Something that Jay and I talk about on the Backstage Banter podcast. If you haven't listened, go check it out, backstagebanter@thepodcast.com. We talk about how relationships are so crucial to what we do in entertainment. And I'm sure if you're listening to this, you would agree that building relationships, fostering relationships, keeping relationships, that's all super important. And that really, I think, drives a majority of how we work, how we find jobs, how we collaborate. There's so much to relationships that I think are pivotal to what we do. This is what I wrote. I discussed the times when my communication and actions come into conflict, and that is still a work in progress. I think that being able to voice how you feel about something, especially whenever it's something that maybe is contrary to your values and your beliefs, contrary to the way that you typically lead, maybe it's out of character for you, maybe you made a mistake. I think that owning up to that, something that I talked about in my last episode, was about owning your role, owning your mistakes and things of that nature. And I think that using this as a way to keep you on track of what is important and focusing on how your contribution to a relationship can be supporting and rewarding in what you're doing. I think the relationship part has become more important than I realized, and I'm glad that I was able to see this when I wrote this, however many years ago it's been. The next thing I wrote about was adaptability. This wasn't about being a pushover for me. It wasn't about not standing my ground about what I think, what I know, my experience, what I'm capable of. It was none of that. It was about being willing to reassess my role, to reassess how I fit into the group, to reassess the dynamics, and to be willing to try something new. I think trying something new, being teachable, and not being the person who is always the right person. I think it's important, and I'm sure all of you have heard a version of this, is to not be the smartest person in the room. And I think that this is sort of a version of that, but I think being adaptable in communication and tone and how you lead, I think is a super incredible tool to practice and to be aware of and to be thinking about. As a team leader, you come into a problem or a conversation or maybe a way that you want to lead something in rehearsal or in tech, or you want to build a schedule a particular way, and maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it's falling apart. Maybe the director totally wants to change everything. Listening to your team and letting them give another solution and being like, you know what? That's a great idea, or yeah, let's pivot. This isn't working, and acknowledging that, and then moving on to something else. That happens to me on a daily basis, honestly. And sometimes are small things, sometimes are really big. And I think having that ability to adapt to the moment is really important and a key takeaway from this value exercise that I went through. So the last one that I talk about is courage and risk-taking. I drew this map of my values and my skills and everything. This is sort of like another thing I did. But risk taking was right in the center. Like it was like a circle, and then I had like 4 extensions, pillars, whatever, and the lines represented different skills and competencies that I had or I was working on or that I felt like were correlated. And through this, I put risk-taking at the very center. So to me, taking a risk is, in a way, being courageous, being vulnerable, willing to say you made a mistake, willing to say or willing to ask for help, willing to not be the person who's right. And this is what I wrote. I used to think courage was about being fearless. Now I know it's about being honest in front of people who might not agree. And to me, that screams vulnerability. And I learned a lot about vulnerability, and I still read and I learn a lot about vulnerability. And I think that's a really important tool and practice to have as a leader. And I don't mean like telling your whole fucking life story and sobbing and doing the whole kumbaya thing. That's not what I mean about vulnerability. I mean, like an example, like I mentioned, asking for help. That's a vulnerable act to say you don't know how to do something, or to say you're not sure, and to ask your team for help, or to ask someone else, hey, I need your help doing this thing, or I'm not sure where to go with this, or I'm not sure how to align this with the vision of the production, or I'm not sure, fill in the blank. And asking someone for help that may know how to do that, or someone that that maybe has those strengths that you don't. I think that is a really important, not only leadership skill set to really, dig your heels into, but I think that having that as a value, for me, a personal code that helps to guide me, really makes a huge difference for me, just because of who I am and how I'm built. That really opens a lot of things for me that I don't naturally come to. I think the more I practice and the more that I work on a lot of these skills, they come a lot more naturally to me. But I don't necessarily think that they were a natural ability that I had. So the next thing I want to talk about is, why is all of this important and why does it matter? I think that having a code, it helps you hold everything in a box. It helps you sort of categorize, as we like to do as humans, and to have something that you have already went through and you processed and you've thought about it and you've put it down on paper. Writing stuff down on paper is a lot more memorable. Biologically, when you write, it actually imprints it onto your brain. So for me, I actually like to write stuff down a lot more than typing in my notes or Notion or Airtable or whatever tool, Asana, you want to use. I think that for me, writing stuff down is actually helped me tremendously to not only remember things, but to process things and to get things more ingrained. So, having something that's written down is super important. So, especially whenever you get into those high stress moments, they're going to happen. You're going to get into a moment where you have to act fast. You have to communicate clearly. You have to lead the room. You have to make a decision in an emergency crisis situation. And when you have these personal code of ethics and these values you've processed through, they, as I was saying, they have come more of a natural tendency for me. So the more that you think about them, the more that you revisit them, and the more that you're investigating those things, when you get into those moments, it's going to be a lot easier to deal with. It's going to be a lot easier for you to pivot. It's going to be a lot easier for you to be in those moments and be authentic to how you feel and how you believe, and instead of reacting to that thing. It's sort of like this quiet confidence that it gives you in decision making. And when you have this underlying thing, it makes those moments a lot easier. So I think that's why it's important, and it really can differentiate you as a leader. Not that matters, but I think that, as you're growing into leadership roles, if you're starting, having this as a way to guide you is super important. If you feel like this is something that can help you, I would invite you to take a moment, and they don't have to be 4. It can be 6, it can be 8, it can be 1, it can be 2. For me, it was 4. And I felt like I was thinking sort of as, pillars, and there's 4 pillars of a roof or a house or a wall or whatever. And that's kind of what's holding up my stage management style, my leadership style. And so take a moment and think about what those skills are, what those values are, and what is important to you as a leader. When you walk into the first rehearsal, what do you want to communicate? When you start your first tech rehearsal and you get into your first transition that's really hairy and you aren't sure how to approach that, or an actor calls in on the first preview and you have to put it back into the show, what is your response? How do you handle that? And how does that align with your personal code of ethics? So take a look at my personal code of ethics article I wrote on Half Hour. I'll link it in the show notes. Check that out, and I go a lot deeper into that. So be sure to check that out. And like I said, take a minute and think about these things. If you haven't already, if you have, that's great. I think that's amazing. But if you haven't, take a moment, write it down, jot it down, put it somewhere that you can see it frequently and revisit it. I think it's good. I go through mine like every 6 months. And if I'm really busy, it's usually about once a year. And I just kind of read through them and I remind myself, these are the things that drive how I want to be a leader. This is the kind of person I want to show up as. This is the kind of leader I want to show up as. This is the kind of teammate I want to show up as. And when you have that, it becomes a lot easier to not think about those really hard, complicated things whenever you have those in your mind. You can focus on things that are more important, things that take a lot more brain power. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it was helpful, and I hope it added value. That's always my top priority. I don't want to waste anyone's time. Please hit the like, subscribe, share it with a friend, a colleague, your network, whoever, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much.